Good afternoon and welcome back to the YouTube channel, everyone. So as you all know, the car's been sold and I can no longer drive it. But I thought before it goes, I thought something interesting that probably a lot of viewers would benefit from is going through all the XKR or XK X150 nuances that everybody should take into consideration when they're buying an XK X150. Those are the not so obvious things. So I'm not talking about the obvious things that you check when you buy any used car. Everybody should know about those when they're looking to spend that much money on a car. But I'm talking about the stuff that had I known before I bought an XK X150, I would have probably associated more value to. So let's start talking about those things. And the first thing that I would mention that I didn't really associate much value to was the value of having, a spare key. So Jaguar comes with this really flimsy key, and having a spare or getting a spare from Jaguar in 2023 would cost you nearly £800. So had I known that, I probably would have associated some value to having a second key and not just having one, assuming that I'll probably get a second one for about £200-300. That wasn't the case, and so therefore there is value in having a second key. And then when you do check both keys, do check them, because the rear cover of this can come away from the battery inside the key, and that can cause a loose connection, which gives you an error in the dash. So check both keys that they work okay and you don't have any contact issues with the battery, and then you have to put it in the center console. But really it's because this cover's come away and I had to get my cover replaced. So associate value to two keys, because a spare key is expensive, and it's more expensive than other manufacturers. So it's more important to have a spare key when you're driving a Jaguar X150, because a replacement is very expensive. Now, the second thing, let's come to the rear. Inspect the rear lights. Make sure that there isn't any condensation in these lights. You should get up close and see if you can see any steaming or any moisture inside the lens. These tend to perish, and this corner to replace would cost you nearly £600 or over £600. That's about £380. The inner tail light is about £190. So yeah, you're looking in excess of £600. So just look over here, see if these seals have perished and if any moisture has got in through here. If it has, it will ruin the aesthetics of the car, and this car is very much about the aesthetics. So you wouldn't like that, and then you'd want to replace it, and then you'd end up spending 600 plus on having lights that don't let water in on either side. So 600 each corner to replace those. So do associate value. Other cars, lights are very cheap. You can get them very easily, but XK X150 lights are very rare on the second-hand market. You almost always have to buy brand new. And when you do, it's not cheap at all. The next thing, so the third thing, is the boot cover. Look at these fixings. These should be nice and tight. These are prone to coming loose, and then the whole boot cover is no longer secured on the boot lid, and it comes away and hangs like a tongue until it puts a lot of pressure on those rear clips, and then the whole thing falls down. Then you'd misplace it. I paid £380 to replace the boot cover, and I got re-engineered clips to ensure that they are secured and flush on the actual boot lid itself. So if they're coming away or loose, associate some value to that, because it will eventually come entirely loose and you'll have a problem. The next thing, the fourth thing you should look for, is a spare wheel. Those are £180 and they're notorious for being missing. And that'll cost you about nearly £200 to replace. The fifth thing is look for water in the boot. it's notorious that this leaks water, but most of the X150s have a black carpet in the boot, so you don't see the water stains and where previously water may have ingressed from. But the seals around here tend to let water in. I had to get mine fixed by Jaguar Chilton, but just make sure everything is bone dry under there. If it's been raining, or if the car's recently been washed, you'll see signs of moisture. Put your hand on the carpet, because you won't see the stains, but you could feel the moisture in the carpet, and then you'll know that it's a boot that's let water in. The next thing you should look for is a DVD. I'm trying to get this off now. A DVD in the navigation. I didn't have one. I still haven't got one. Not that it matters, but because most people use their phones and it's a really archaic satellite navigation system, but just do check that there is a DVD in there and everything works the way it should. The next thing is this rear quarter glass on the X150. It's held up by plastic brackets and they tend to snap. So you'll see that this will come away slightly, or it'll be angled, and it won't exactly be flush on the rubber seal. That's when you know one of the brackets has failed, and they don't sell the brackets separately. You'll have to replace the whole rear quarter glass. So just look for a nice flush fit on the rubber seal and the rear quarter glass, because if it isn't flush, you'll hear it whistle at high speeds, and that will annoy you. So just do have a look at that and make sure that you have good contact in the quarter glass and with the quarter glass and the seal, and and it's absolutely straight and flush. So that's another nuance of the X150. Moving on to the front, then, the headlight lenses. Now, the headlight lenses are so important to the aesthetic of this car. And it's great to have great clear lenses. And if you see that they're misty or are starting to cloud, each one is 1,200 plus to replace, 1,250 to replace each headlight assembly. So it's 2,500 to replace both. And if you have cloudy headlights, the car just won't look as nice. And it's so pivotal to the look of the car that other headlights of other cars are not as expensive. I'm used to paying £300-400 for headlights, but this is 1,250 plus each light, and that's really expensive to replace. So definitely associate value to a car that has good, sharp, clear lenses. Of course, you could refurb them yourself, but they're never really the same as when they left the factory. And if you want that clean, sharp look, you're going to need nice, sharp lenses. And because of the shape of these lenses, they do get battered in the weather and high speeds. So definitely associate value to them. The next thing I would say is the condenser, which is hidden behind the front bumper. And and because of its location, it's prone to stones flying in at high speed, causing a leak in the condenser, causing your air conditioning to not work, and it's not cheap to replace the condenser. It's a very labor-intensive job, and the part itself isn't cheap neither. I think I paid 500 odd for my condenser to be replaced. So get in the car, put on the air conditioning. You will know immediately whether it's working or not, because Jaguar air conditioning is ice cold. Very powerful air conditioning system. You shouldn't be sitting there wondering, is the fan on? Or, I think the air conditioning is working, when it's really the fan. You'll know when the air conditioning is working. And if you're in doubt, then it isn't. And it most likely is a leak in the condenser. So associate value with working air conditioning. Okay, let's move inside the car and let's talk about the interior. So the glove box damper. These tend to fail, and they're a pain in the backside to replace. Even though the glove box damper itself is very cheap, but getting to it is a pain. And I just paid Mark to do it, but yeah, just open the glove box. It should open nice and smooth. It shouldn't just drop and flop. And if it does, then you've failed. Your glove box damper has failed, and you're gonna have to replace it, and it might annoy you. The next thing is the window switch. These are quite flimsy, and they tend to break. So give the switches a good tug and make sure that the switch doesn't come away from the door handle, because if it does, that's going to be a very expensive replacement as well. A new window switch is in excess of £300 from Jaguar, and most of the time you actually have to replace the handle and not the switch itself, because the handle that it clips into, those clips tend to break. So definitely inspect the switches and window switches and ensure that they are secure on the handle and nothing's broken there. The next thing is headlining. Of course, it's a Jag, so look for any headlining sag anywhere. This one's nice and tight and plush on the roof, which I liked, and gave me a good feeling when I looked at the car. But generally, I would recommend inspecting the headlining as well, and any other tweeters and fixings inside the Jag, because it will tell you about how well the car's been looked after. And then I guess the next thing you should think about is the wing mirrors. So open and close the wing mirrors, make sure that they operate okay, because that mechanism is prone to getting play, and then and the wing mirror doesn't fully retract, and then it's going to bother you when you park your car and you see one ear sticking out, and you're going to want to get it fixed, and that's going to be some labor. So the X150 can have those fail or loosen. It's not really expensive to fix, but it'll bother you, so just have a go at that and make sure that's okay. And then the final thing is intimate and hard to diagnose, but open the bonnet up a few times, close it a few times, and see if you can get the pedestrian system error, because the pedestrian system error can be triggered by airbag sensors that tend to fail on the pedestrian system, and it's about £300 to replace both of them. You could do the work yourself if you're quite a handy mechanic, but if you're not, that's going to cost you money, and these cars are prone for those sensors to fail due to bad contact, corrosion, aging, and as a result, you just have to kind of just try and double check that by triggering it by opening and closing the bonnet, and see if you get the pedestrian system error. So definitely check that out as well. And then those are just the basic things that I think are nuances for the X150 that anybody looking to buy one should really think about. Really associate value to things that are perhaps not so obvious, and then just make a call from there. So do check all the normal things, but these are the X150 specific things that you should be looking at if you're interested in buying a car. But I'll tell you one thing, it's absolutely worth it despite its nuances. It's the best car I've ever driven, and you won't regret it, but you'll be happier if you have a car that doesn't have any of these niggles, because then you'll be fine. I would also say look at the engine mounts, because engine mounts tend to fail on these as well. I don't know how you'd inspect that, but if you can, have a look at the engine mounts, because you may need to replace those, and it'll be 400 plus per mount, and it has two engine mounts that tend to fail, so it will cost you about £900 to get new mounts for the engine. So that's another thing that you should look at. But apart from that, all the usual stuff, you won't regret it. If you are thinking of buying one, absolutely do it, but look out for these things, because they're not so obvious to anybody who's not owned an X150 before. So all the best, and thanks a lot for watching, and we'll catch you again next time, perhaps with a new project, and I will be putting up another video on what that next project will be. All the best, and adios, amigos.